Good evening. This is Real News with Real Vida TV. Today is Monday, December 29th, 2025, and I'm Jeremy Coe. Welcome to our 2025 Year in Review. Thank you for joining us for this special episode in which we will review some of the top news stories of the year. The year 2025 has been a tumultuous one, with major news stories breaking so quickly that there was barely enough time to process them before another world-changing, history-making event happened elsewhere. The fast pace of breaking news in our world sometimes has the effect of numbing us to how significant the events that are happening all around us truly are. And there is no way to discuss all of the most important stories nationally and internationally. So we here at Real Vida News have tried to touch on some of the stories that we believe are most significant. And yes, I know it has been a long time since we produced a news broadcast. All I can say is we've been very, very busy here, and I'm very, very sorry. One of my New Year's resolutions for 2025 is to stay consistent with these newscasts. We've been blessed to learn from the hundreds and maybe thousands of letters that we have received about these news broadcasts, exactly how much many of you rely on them and appreciate them. Thank you so much for your support. And to the multiple letter writers who suspected that my voice was potentially silenced by government operatives driving black SUVs with dark suits and sunglasses. Thanks. Thanks for making my day. Maybe one day the government will try to shut me down, but it hasn't happened yet. And now, some of the top stories of 2025. We first turn to the chaotic government of the world's only remaining superpower, the United States of America. Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th U.S. president on January 20th, 2025, marking only the second time in U.S. history a president has served non-consecutive terms. The first was Grover Cleveland, who served as president from 1885 to 1889, and then again from 1893 to 1897. Even before President Trump was sworn into office, his Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was making headlines. President Trump appointed Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX and X, formerly Twitter. The head of this new agency launched a chainsaw for bureaucracy, firing over 260,000 federal workers by March and dismantling taxpayer-funded agencies like USAID. As of the time of this broadcast, Elon Musk is the world's richest man with a net worth of approximately $650 billion, approaching trillionaire status. Musk was worth only $250 billion in 2024. And at the beginning of 2020, he was worth a mere $30 billion. But due to Tesla's stock shooting up 650% in 1 year, he went from the world's 35th richest man to the world's richest man at $170 billion in the space of just 1 year. The Trump administration launched massive immigration enforcement operations, including third country deportations and the creation of large-scale detainment centers. During 2025, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, reported a significant number of formal deportations, 500,000 people, as well as many self-deportations, around 2 million people, leaving the USA for their country of origin due to stricter immigration policies. These policies sparked vigorous debate across the United States, with many pro-immigrant groups staging rallies and some incidents of violence against immigrations and custom enforcement officers and facilities, including a sniper opening fire at an ICE facility in Dallas in September, which resulted in the death of one migrant and several other injuries. Historic government shutdown and partisan divide also made the news this year. A 45-day federal shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, occurred in late 2024 into early 2025, rattling global markets and delaying food benefits for millions. During the 2025 U.S. government shutdown, Republicans pushed for short-term funding at 2025 levels, focusing on spending cuts and security enhancements, while Democrats demanded extensions for Affordable Care Act subsidies, Medicaid cuts restoration, and limits on White House funding control. leading to a standoff over healthcare and fiscal priorities, with both sides blaming the other for harming the public. The partisan climate in Washington, D.C. in 2025 is exceptionally high, leading to significant gridlock, the government shutdown, and a toxic environment where lawmakers are actively choosing to leave Congress. A record number of lawmakers, 43 House members and 10 senators, have announced they will not seek re-election in 2026, with many citing frustrations over the pervasive toxic environment and gridlock. One representative responded when asked if D.C. was as bad as it seemed. No, it's worse. Major bills are largely passing with support from only one party, and polls indicate that Americans are deeply polarized, with a majority expecting a year of significant political conflict. Local government officials overwhelmingly believe that national polarization is having a negative impact on the entire country. So now we must turn from the world's only remaining superpower to the other 194 nations in the world. And for all of you nerds out there, that would be 193 United Nations member states and 2 observer states, Vatican City and Palestine. Gaza ceasefire first. A U.S. brokered peace plan went into effect on October 10th, 2025, which led to a fragile ceasefire after the death toll in the conflict reached 65,000 people. This agreement marked the first phase of a broader peace deal aimed at ending the war. The agreement involved hostage and prisoner exchanges, increased humanitarian aid, and a partial Israeli military withdrawal. But it has been highly fragile and marked by numerous violations. Hamas was to release all remaining living Israeli hostages. In all, 20 live people were released and some remains of deceased hostages. In exchange, Israel was to release approximately 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and 1,700 detainees. Israel also agreed to lift the blockade on all aid and allow up to 600 trucks of essential supplies, including food, water, medicine, and fuel, into Gaza daily, to be distributed by UN agencies and the Red Crescent. A multinational force of around 200 U.S. supervised troops was established to monitor the ceasefire's implementation, though no U.S. forces entered Gaza itself. Now, Ukraine peace talks. In February, a contentious Oval Office meeting between Trump, Vice President Vance, and President Zelensky of Ukraine went viral, preceding a shift in U.S. policy and direct peace talks with Russia and Saudi Arabia without European involvement. The talks centered on a U.S.-backed framework, aiming for a deal with key terms like Ukraine's non-NATO status, capped armed forces, EU membership, and security guarantees. However, the talks also faced major hurdles over territorial control, such as the Donbass and Crimea regions, as well as nuclear plant status, with ongoing intense U.S., Ukraine, European discussions, drafting revised plans while awaiting Russian acceptance. The key Ukrainian points were to retain their current armed forces numbers, or approximately 800,000, EU accession, concrete air, land, and sea security guarantees. The key Russian points are that Ukraine must cede the remaining Donbass regions and renounce any attempt for NATO membership. Ukraine wants to freeze the map at the current lines, while Russia demands full control of the Donbass. The United States negotiators have proposed a free economic zone as a compromise. Negotiations were complicated today, December 29th, based on allegations that Ukraine attempted a drone strike on one of Vladimir Putin's residences in Novograd. Zelensky denied the claim, accusing Moscow of trying to sabotage the peace process. Now, as far as the fighting is concerned, Russian forces have allegedly made advances in late December 2025, including seizing the town of Siversk in the Donetsk province. Russia still occupies approximately 20% of Ukraine. There continues to be intense fighting over the town of Povrazk, which is a strategic logistics hub. Estimates suggest total casualties have now reached approximately 1 million for Russia and an unknown number that is either very similar or much higher for Ukraine since 2022. The war is soon going to pass the 4-year mark, which is longer than the Soviet involvement in World War II. There are still almost 8 million Ukrainians remaining displaced outside of the country as of late 2025. So it's not surprising that yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he is not counting anymore on Ukraine agreeing to withdraw from its dominated areas in Donetsk region because he believes that they're about to conquer it anyway. Reuters reported the following. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Ukraine was in no hurry for peace. If it did not want to resolve their conflict peacefully, Moscow would accomplish all its goals by force. Russian commanders told Putin during an inspection visit that Moscow's forces had captured the towns of Mirnograd, Rodetsky, and Artemovka in Ukraine's eastern region of Donetsk, as well as Gualipol and Stepnogorsk in the Zaporizhia region, the Kremlin said on the Telegram messaging app. Now, back to the United States, but also internationally, the first American Pope. Following the death of Pope Francis in April, Chicago-born Cardinal Francis Prevost was elected as Pope Leo XIV, the first American to lead the Catholic Church. He did extensive missionary work in Peru and speaks fluent Spanish, English, French, Portuguese, and Italian. He reads German as well as Latin, and he also speaks some of a native Indian dialect from South America. He's also a fan of the Chicago White Sox. Now on to science and technology. This AI Stargate project. The Trump administration announced a $500 billion joint venture with OpenAI and SoftBank to build massive U.S. AI infrastructure. Also, as to advanced AI models, OpenAI released GPT-5 in August, while Google countered with Gemini 3 in November, intensifying the global AI arms race. In a quantum leak, Google announced a new quantum processor capable of running algorithms 13,000 times faster than the world's most powerful supercomputers. Some natural disasters and tragedies from this year. California wildfires first. In January, the Palisades and Eaton fires in Los Angeles became the most destructive in the city's history, destroying over 16,000 structures. In Texas, catastrophic flooding in July killed over 130 people in Texas, including 25 campers, 2 counselors, and the camp owner at a summer camp in Kerr County named Camp Mystic on July 4th, 2025. Some high-profile killings from this year. 2025 saw several shocking violent acts, including the story that was covered here, the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in Utah, and the fatal stabbing of director Rob Reiner and his wife in Los Angeles. The suspect detained for first-degree murder in Reiner's death was his son, Nick. Now on to the Louvre in Paris, the Louvre jewel heist. Mass thieves stole over $100 million in jewels from the Louvre in Paris in October, an event that became an internet sensation and really sounds like a movie. Now, the persecution of the global church. The year 2025 saw a dramatic increase worldwide in the persecution of the global Christian church. In China, for example, over 1,000 law enforcement personnel were involved in a massive operation that ultimately resulted in the arrest of hundreds of Christians. Starting on December 13th, the Chinese Communist Party mobilized more than 1,000 police officers, SWAT units, anti-riot forces, and firefighters in the Zhejiang provinces, Yayang Town, and Wenzhou City, raiding churches and conducting mass arrests of Christians. China Aid reported Friday. Belongings of relevant individuals were illegally confiscated, roads leading to the church were completely blocked by police, and Christians in Yaying town were unable to enter the Yaying church. The operation lasted nearly 5 days, yet no public statement was issued by officials, the outlet noted. Within just the first 2 days, several hundreds of people were taken away for questioning. On December 16th and 17th, at least 4 more individuals were detained. Nobody under the age of 18 is permitted to go to church in China. Those that are adults are only allowed to go to churches that are officially registered with the government. Anyone that attempts to defy these rules is at risk of being rounded up and forcibly deprogrammed. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom and other religious liberty watchdogs have repeatedly warned that China's totalitarian regime is enacting human rights abuses against religious groups within the nation's border. A USCIRF report late last year detailed mass arrests and the destruction or removal of church property. Religious groups and leaders who do not register with the official government-approved religious organizations are often arrested, imprisoned, and forced into anti-cult programs to deprogram Christians. In India, it is Hindu extremists that are doing the persecuting. They have literally burned down hundreds of churches in recent years. In other instances, mobs of Hindu extremists storm churches and start attacking those that are worshiping. For example, a mob of 200 extremists stormed a church and beat the believers they found with iron rods. More recently, an extremist mob in northern India viciously assaulted a small group of believers and forced them to burn a large pile of Bibles and Christian literature. The Hindu extremists, whose number had then reached 80, searched their car, pulled out all Bibles and tracts, and cast them onto the ground in a heap. They shot videos that showed the two couples disoriented and in shock, forced to repeat that they intended conversion in the village and that they would never return. The mob kicked the Bibles and spoke disrespectfully about Christ. A member of the mob then took a bottle of flammable liquid from the hands of a boy standing with the mob and forced 3 of the Christians to sprinkle it on the Bibles and literature. After forcing the pastor to set the Bibles on fire, the mob then shouted praises to the Hindu god Rama. In Africa, President Trump has warned that he would do something about the terrorists that are doing the slaughtering in Nigeria, and on Christmas Day, he did take action. President Trump said Thursday that the U.S. launched powerful and deadly strikes against Islamic State forces in Nigeria after spending weeks accusing the West African country's government of failing to rein in the persecution of Christians. Tonight, at my direction as Commander-in-Chief, the United States launched a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS terrorist scum in northwest Nigeria, who have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years and even centuries, Mr. Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social. I have previously warned these terrorists that if they did not stop the slaughtering of Christians, there will be hell to pay, and tonight there was. So far in 2025, Islamic terrorists in Nigeria have killed over 12,000 people. The violence in the Northwest region, where the strikes occurred, is driven in large part by armed bandits and gangs kidnapping for ransom. The insurgency is concentrated in the Northeast, where jihadist groups like the notorious Boko Haram and its now more powerful splinter, the Islamic State West Africa Province, an affiliate of the Islamic State group, have killed tens of thousands of civilians over the past decade. Nigeria is not officially at war, but more people are killed there than in most war-torn countries. More than 12,000 people were killed by various violent groups this year alone, according to Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, a monitoring group. Collectively, more than 3 billion people live in the 3 nations that we have mentioned. But the persecution that is going on in smaller countries, such as North Korea and Eritrea, is even worse. Henrietta Blythe, CEO of Open Doors UK and Ireland, previously told Newsweek The persecution of Christians around the world is one of the great untold scandals of the 21st century. It can take many forms. In North Korea, it may be a summary public execution without trial, merely for owning a Bible. In Eritrea, it can be 10 years spent in a blazing hot prison cell made from a metal shipping container, merely for belonging to an unregistered house church. According to Open Doors, North Korea is the number 1 global offender when it comes to Christian persecution, and Eritrea is number 4. The good news is that persecution often makes the Christian faith grow rapidly, and we are seeing this happen in many areas of the globe. In the words of the ancient church leader Tertullian, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. The church is suffering the opposite of serious persecution here in the United States, more like the lukewarm church in Revelation that Christ wanted to spit out of his mouth because they were neither hot nor cold. The state of the church in America is being presently described as the great unchurching. The U.S. is undergoing its fastest religious shift in modern history, marked by a rapid increase in the religiously unaffiliated and numerous church closures nationwide. Why it matters. The great unchurching of America comes as identity and reality are increasingly shaped by non-institutional spiritual sources. YouTube mystics, TikTok tarot, digital skeptics, folk saints, and AI-generated prayer bots. Thanks to our friend Michael Snyder at the economiccollapseblog.com for his excellent reporting on this story about religious persecution, as it was the primary source for this particular information. As always, in a world full of sad and depressing news stories, I would like to end on a positive note. Here's a few positive stories from 2025. The Highway Chihuahua Rescue first. A 2-year-old Chihuahua named Henry led motorists on a stressful 10-mile chase down Interstate 5 in San Diego after slipping away from his family. Concerned drivers eventually cornered and leashed him, leading to an emotional reunion with his owner at the San Diego Humane Society. Now, the Ohio Bus Drivers Miracle Rescue. In February 2025, bus driver Dorian Pace was hailed as a hero after he successfully evacuated a bus full of middle school students in Cleveland Heights just moments before the vehicle was engulfed in flames due to a tire fire. Now, prom date turned organ donor. Over 30 years after attending prom together, Elena Hershey donated a kidney through a paired exchange to save the life of her former prom date, Sean Moyer, who received his transplant in February 2025. We're going to be praying for some more organ donations and some pairings. Now that's all for this episode. This has been Real News from Real Vida TV. Thanks for watching, and remember, the light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not and cannot overcome it. In the midst of all the darkness, be the light.